Hello, everybody. Happy 2026. This is my first video for January, and I just wanted to say Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for being here. So, for the first video, very exciting, we are going to be talking about the nervous system. So, if you're following along or you want to know what page is, it starts on page 189. Now, I found and love the nervous system videos that I sent. There was about, I want to say 40, maybe 50 minutes of them, not by me. And I think he does such a good job. So definitely make sure you watch those either before or after this video. Now, if you're watching this after, it's like a little overview, a recap, a refresher. If you're watching it before, it's going to be almost like more shallow than his videos because he is definitely more of an expert when it comes to the human body than I am. I can very easily admit that. That being said, the nervous system is such an important topic for us, which is one of the reasons we spend so much time. And it's actually one of the reasons I put it before even like blood and cardiovascular and all of that. Because yoga and our nervous system are so intertwined, and we can play such an important role in nervous system regulation, in stopping survival mode, and incorporate and increasing and improving rest and digest and yeah, I think it's just really important to realize going into being a yoga teacher how crucial yoga is for nervous system. All right, so what is the nervous system? Let's start at the top. It is a complex network of nerves and cells. It's the body's communication system, constantly regulating how we feel and respond to the world around us, which would be proprioception. The nervous system constantly scans your environment to decide whether you're safe or in danger, and it switches between two main states to protect and regulate your body. Often, your responses, which are provided through the nervous system, are called reflexes. Okay? Two main branches. So we have the central nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so central, center to your body. It is the control center, and its main focus is to analyze and interpret sensory information to allow for decision making, producing an appropriate response. So the central nervous system. Now, the peripheral nervous system, PNS, extends throughout the entire body. So that's not just in the middle, it goes all the way out, all of your essentially everything who you are other than the brain and the spine. So this is really important because it connects the CNS, the central nervous system, to the rest of the external environment, the rest of the world. The nerves of the PNS are how the CNS receives sensory input, integrates that information, and then sends a response to the rest of the body. The peripheral nervous system is made up of 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. I'm going to say that one more time. PNS, 12 pairs of cranial nerves, 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and it carries information to and from the brain to all of the other systems. It has two main functions, the PNS. One, providing sensory information from the rest of the body up to the CNS via the afferent, AFFERENT pathway. This is essentially the sensory pathway. It includes sight, smell, touch, and taste. So that's afferent sensory pathway. So if you're tasting a lemon, that the experience of biting into that lemon is going to be going through the afferent pathway to the central nervous system. Also, the peripheral nerves send information to the CNS back down the rest of your body via the efferent, EFFERENT pathway. This is the motor pathway to your muscles and glands. Super important, okay? So, providing information to the rest of the body up to the CNS via afferent, and then back down the rest of the body, efferent. Important. For example, when you go walking on cement to walking on sand, your body takes that information and senses the change in the feel of the ground beneath your feet, and it sends it up your afferent pathway to the CNS, where your brain and spinal cord quickly analyzes the information and tells your body through the efferent E pathway to change your walking gait to adapt to the sand. So, for example, in yoga, if you're in a downward dog, right leg high, step through, plant the foot, crescent lunge. As you're planting the foot and rising into your crescent lunge, the afferent pathway, the experience, the touch, the foot on the front of the mat, the back heel lifted, your core pulling up, your chest lifting, all of that is going into and sending information to the CNS. And then the CNS is sending information back down via the efferent. So A up, E out, or E down, so that your body can stabilize in the crescent lunge. It can feel the inner thighs pull in. It can center and square yourself off, and so forth, okay? Important. Then, just so you know, the motor pathway is divided. So this is going to be the efferent pathway. That's the motor pathway. That's what's going back. That's what's telling your body what to do after it's received the information. It's divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements like lifting your arm or walking or exhaling through your mouth, any of that. The ANS, autonomic nervous system, controls involuntary functions that we don't have to think about, like heart rate, even breathing, like when you're asleep, blood pressure, digestion, okay? So somatic is going to be voluntary, that's SONS, and then ANS is going to be involuntary. Very important. Let's keep going. If you're following along in your book, 190. So how is information sent through the body's nervous system? Very cool. Through sensory receptors. They are specialized nerve endings, and they're located throughout the body and convert external environmental stimuli like heat, light, sound, taste, and motion into information that your brain can use to produce a response. So for example, touching snow, knowing that it would be cold. I'm staring at snow right now. So there's 4 different types of receptors. 1, mechanoreceptors respond to mechanical forces like touch and pressure. So for example, if somebody were to give you a hug, or in child's pose, if somebody were going to give you hands onto your low back. Nociceptors respond to pain. So essentially, if you're taking pain meds, that's one of the things that it can actually dull. So for example, if you have like a hip pain, for example, and you're in a pigeon pose and that's lighting up, that's that receptor telling your body that you're not okay in that pose and you either need to come out of the pose or you need to change it. There's receptors that tell your body that. Chemoreceptors respond to chemical interaction via taste and smell. And then photoreceptors respond to light and vision, via vision. So those are the 4: nocioceptors, chemoreceptors, and photoreceptors. 4 of the receptors to tell your body how to respond to external stimuli. All right, the ANS, autonomic nervous system. Why is that word so hard for me? Manages daily activities and responds to situations. So this is where, so we just talked about this on page 189. So you have your somatic and the autonomic. So on ANS. All right, so the ANS has 2 divisions. This is important. This is where yoga starts to come into more of a play. Sympathetic, fight, flight, or freeze, and parasympathetic, rest and digest, okay? So these are in that row, that line. Both start with sensory signals sending information to the brain. The brain accesses this information, CNS, and based on past experiences, decides if the sympathetic or the parasympathetic or a combination of both are required for the external stimuli or situation. So, for example, when you, one of my favorite examples to explain this is if you are entering your house and all the lights are off and someone jumps out at you, and you are going to probably immediately feel that fight or flight. However, your body is then going to also try to understand the actual external situation and stimuli, and maybe it's your friend, partner, roommate, or whoever, and you're like, oh, I know this person, I trust this person, I'm not scared anymore. And then it goes back into parasympathetic, okay? So they can go very, very quickly from one to the next. That's what can cause like that heart rate. So in a yoga class, for example, maybe you're in crow pose, or you're attempting crow pose, I should say, and you're feeling that sense of shifting, and you're telling your body, I'm okay, I'm breathing, I can handle this. And then all of a sudden your body weight starts to shift a little too far forward. That sympathetic SNS system is going to take over, and you're going to either have that fight, flight, or freeze feeling, which is why sometimes we freeze and we just fall over, or we fight against it and we push ourselves away and we come back onto our feet, for example. However, you can also catch yourself. So maybe in that situation, you're leaning a little forward, your weight starts to come forward, but you have the strength and the ability, because maybe it's the right time of class, you're feeling good that day, whatever it is, for your core to lift you up and for you to maintain steadiness, not falling and not coming out of it. That's going to trigger that parasympathetic. But your heart rate might still go up a little bit because there was that moment, you know? So that's why there's like these moments of ups and downs throughout life, throughout our yoga practice and so forth. And understanding them and understanding how to be thoughtful of that. That's one of the reasons we talk about incorporating balance poses in a really mindful way and not necessarily overloading the body with balance poses. Because, and we haven't actually gotten into it this way, we talked a lot about it in a muscular sense and in a pacing sense, but in a nervous system sense. If you are giving your students so many arm balances, standing balances, and really challenging poses, one after another, and they're falling over and they're getting fatigued, what is going to happen? That sympathetic nervous system is going to continue to kick in higher and higher and higher and higher. So what's going to end up happening? It's going to cause them to lose their focus and concentration, lose their balance, not feel as strong and steady. It's going to make them possibly injure themselves because they don't have that calm in alignment within themselves, okay? So not only when you're planning your classes do you want to think about safety in terms of muscular, in terms of joints, in terms of pace, breath, for example, and heart rate, you also want to be thoughtful of nervous system regulation. Yay! All right, so going back to it. So we talked about SNS and PNS. Now to get into them more, when the SNS, sympathetic nervous system, is active, motor neurons, that's the afferent. No, wait, now I'm getting the efferent pathway, E. Motor neurons. They travel to the muscles, glands, and increase heart rate and blood pressure. They open our airways, inhibit digestion and reproductive organs, stimulate adrenaline production, and open our sweat glands and contract the muscles. So this is good for us if we're like out in the world and a bear is chasing us, because you really don't want to necessarily be worried about if you're hungry or if you're still digesting, and you definitely don't want to worry about sexual impulses. If you're running from a bear, you want all of that to be turned off so that your body can focus on pumping your muscles, lifting your quads, pushing through your hamstrings and your glutes and so forth. In yoga, it's really important to realize that all of this is going to be happening in the sense of those moments, and even through an intense cardiovascular class or a challenging class, the sympathetic nervous system can be activated. So say you're doing a lot of chaturangas, a lot of up and down and so forth, that can activate this because our bodies are wired to sense danger, and sometimes they think danger is actually a hard workout. So that's important to know. So that's why it's important for us to be focused on pace and safety and effectiveness. So we give our students child's pose or thread the needle or camel pose or sphinx to come back down, not just for the cardiovascular and muscular, but also for the nervous system. I'm going to say that a lot. All right, so when the PNS, parasympathetic nervous system, is active, motor neurons, efferent, E, travel to the muscles and glands and reduce heart rate and blood pressure. They relax our airways, stimulate digestion and reproductive organs, inhibit adrenaline production, and relax the muscles. So this is why it's important that, all right, I'm getting fiery about this. In our everyday lives, I just listened to NPR this morning and they said on average, Americans are on their phone 5 hours and 16 minutes every fucking day. That is insanity. So, if you think about it, most people, especially in Boston, I love that Todd came and talked to us about, and it was kind of a side note, but he shared about how stressed out Bostonians are, especially, cost of living is high. We are a very educated, career-driven community and culture. Boston and Massachusetts is considered like the most educated, most progressive in many ways. But that can come with a lot of stress. And stress is what? The sympathetic nervous system. So we might not be running from tigers and bears anymore, but we're on our phones over 5 hours a fucking day. We are responding to emails, text messages, external stimuli, scheduling, calls 24/7. So first of all, going back to the 8 limbs, it's important for that pratyahara, withdrawal of senses, coming back to yourself, creating screen-free time. Okay, my friends? So that being said, when we come into our yoga class, regardless of if we're teaching a power yoga, hatha, vinyasa, gentle yoga, whatever it is, we are making sure that we are activating the PNS at the beginning and the end and throughout the class. We do this by incorporating relaxing poses at the beginning and the end, encouraging our students to focus on their breath and their body, to clear their minds, to set an intention. All of this matters for the nervous system, not just everything else, but the nervous system as well. Whew. All right. So, the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Let me check what time it is. All right, we're doing well. So this is activated in response to perceived threats, increasing your heart rate, blood pressure, and adrenaline release. It communicates through chemical messengers called neurotransmitters, including acetylcholine, epinephrine, adrenaline, norepinephrine, to relay signals throughout the body. During exercise, the SNS helps to increase neural activity and can help the workout through releasing hormones like adrenaline in a positive way. Because like I said, when you're running from a bear, your body is going to close down the idea of the focus on digestion and reproductive, and it's going to increase our heart rate. It's going to help us breathe more by opening our airways. It's going to increase the sweat production. And that actually can be very beneficial for our practice, because if we're holding a crescent lunge, maybe we're doing a pulse, maybe we're doing a twist, whatever it is, we want our body to be fueled, to be nourished and empowered from within. That is actually a good thing. And yoga. So yoga is important for parasympathetic. It's also important for sympathetic nervous system, because we can re-regulate our both systems, honestly. One, we can encourage our body to realize and understand when to relax. And two, we can also use the SNS, the sympathetic nervous system, to enhance our actual yoga practice. Holding warrior one, high plank, side plank, whatever it is. And then if there is a safe, positive, and effective period of time in our weekly, daily lives where we are embracing the sympathetic nervous system, but it's not ruining our lives. It's not causing us stress. It's actually helping increase our activity and exercise experience. that is a good thing, okay? Whew, I love this stuff. So, the 4 trauma responses associated with the SNS are fight, which sharpens your senses, prepares you for quick action. So, this could be high to low plank, chaturanga, maybe akapata, one footed. It's focused on confronting this external stimuli, the threat, the danger, whatever it is, right in front with assertive behavior. So in a class, for example, especially like big movements where you're warrior 2, high plank, high plank, chaturanga, that type of stuff is that fight mode in a good way. Flight, second trauma response, also focuses on sharpening your senses, preparing you for quick action, however, focused on escaping the situation by withdrawing or running away. Now, this can sometimes come up in a yoga class in the sense that you might want to, for example, if you're holding a crescent lunge, your heart rate starts to go up, you start to sweat more, you start to breathe a little more heavily, and you start to question yourself. Your muscles are shaking a bit, and that SNS is telling your brain to run away. It's also telling your brain to either fight it or flight it. So sometimes that might be the moment where you're like, I need to put my back knee down. I need to take a break. I need to grab water, towel, whatever it is. And yes, sometimes you should take a break. Other times you shouldn't, because you're capable. You're stronger than you realize. And holding that pose for 1 or 2 more breaths can change that, can create more strength inside of you. All right. Freeze, the third trauma response. It's the opposite of fight or flight. This is where your SNS is activated and you are immobilized and you become unresponsive. So I see this in yoga when people, I call it blanking out. It's almost when they come out of a pose or they get stuck in a pose even, and it's like they're not there anymore, but it's not a meditative state. It's a very disassociation almost. It's like you can tell that they're not here, they're not present anymore. And that's when, what do? We refocus on our cues, breath, body, alignment, and so forth, bringing them back to the present moment and then probably moving them out of that pose. Finally, fawn. This is rather new-ish, and it happens when the person appeases the threat by becoming overly agreeable, submissive, or nurturing. So I see fawn in yoga as when people ignore the times that they do need to take a break. And they just keep going because they feel like they have to keep up with the class. I know sometimes that can also be seen as ego, but it can also be seen as the fact that they don't feel powerful enough to take a break for themselves, and they think that they have to keep up to stay with the group, to stay with the teacher, and so forth. So those are the 4 trauma responses of the sympathetic nervous system when it comes to yoga. All right, moving on, page 191. We're almost done with this. So the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, HPA. This is the slower acting system and closely linked to the ANS and plays a crucial role in stress response. All right, so remember, the ANS is what has both the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the axis of the hypothalamic and pituitary adrenal. This is responsible for the release of cortisol, which is stress chemicals, throughout the bloodstream, and it stimulates the pituitary gland to release ACTH, which then travels to the adrenal cortex, which is within the adrenal glands, and prompts the release of cortisol, stress chemicals again. While the sympathetic nervous system and the HPA axis are distinct, they are interconnected and work together to help manage the body's stress response. The sympathetic nervous system provides the initial rapid response, while the HPA sustains the response and regulates the body's recovery. Oh my God, the human body is so fucking cool. All right, next up. The parasympathetic nervous system, diving a little bit deeper into this, the PNS, rest and digest. This is your body's brake pedal. It restores balance after stress and supports healing. It's activated during rest and relaxation, slowing the heart rate, lowering blood pressure, and promoting digestion and repair, healing. Important to note, the two systems, SNS and PNS, do not work in isolation. They work together, as I was saying, and they keep all of the system's bodies active and relaxed when optimally needed. Problems arise, my friends, when we lean more into one system than the other, and the nervous system can't adapt. However, yoga helps us build a malleable nervous system that can move smoothly from doing to non-doing and appreciate the value of both. So, I empower you to take away from this conversation, this video, the fact that the SNS, the sympathetic nervous system, is not a bad thing. It's an important part of your biology, of your anatomy, and we actually rely on it, not just in our everyday lives, but in our yoga practice. And the parasympathetic nervous system is beyond important, and we need more of a balance of the two and more of a positive experience of both of them, which is what exercise and yoga does for us, especially yoga. Because, for example, say you're a runner and 4 or 5 days out of the week, you just run. Where are we in the nervous system when we're running? We're in the sympathetic nervous system, right? However, you're not embracing that parasympathetic. You're not creating a deeper connection and pathway with that. So, for example, yoga involves and incorporates both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So, yay for yoga. All right, finally, what is nervous system dysregulation? As I'm sure you can guess, it is when your body gets stuck in survival mode, boo-hiss, overreacting to stress and struggling to return to a calm, relaxed state. That is honestly what I see a lot of people in 2025, and hopefully not 2026, but especially the last few years. And I know for a fact that yoga is one of the reasons I have such a strong connection to my nervous system. And it's still crazy, honestly. I still struggle with worry, anxiety, and probably some nervous system dysregulation. I think most of us do. But the more we practice yoga, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes here or there, 60 minutes once a week, couple classes, whatever it is, I know for a fact, science shows us for a fact, and you feel it, that it helps. It helps not just with all the other stuff we've already talked about, but it helps with nervous system regulation. And I do believe, and there's science to back this up as well, that nervous system regulation can change everything else. Your diet, your sleep, your mood, your behavior, your concentration, your focus, your relationships, your entire life. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to say this right now. I am going to continue to focus on this as one of my goals for 2026, nervous system regulation. And I know for a fact that I'm going to incorporate more yoga to help me with it. All right, my friends, we got up to page 191. We are going to go over the rest later. If you are looking ahead, though, check out page 192. There's a beautiful image on there that shows the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems. I'm going to give you a little glimpse of it right here. Whoop, there we go. All right, so this is the nervous system overview, pages 189 to 191. Thank you. And today's special word is going to be pituitary gland. Let's make it part of the video. Thank you.